Peace to you today. I want to teach you a little bit about marriage today from the Bible, from 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. This is a great chapter on marriage, and it's often neglected, but it contains some very valuable and useful information about marriage, ways to really make your marriage function on another level. So let's just start right in here with 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1. And I'll read through verse 5, then I'll go back and expound on each verse. Now concerning the things whereof ye wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Verse 3. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. Verse 4. The wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband. And likewise also the husband hath not power of his own body, but the wife. Verse 5. Defraud ye not one another, except it be with consent for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come again together, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. Okay, so some interesting language here, some King James language here, which is, it's a little different than how we would speak about it today, but I want to clarify that some of these issues here in my teaching here. So back to verse 1. Now concerning the things whereof ye wrote unto me. So he's telling us here that the Corinthians wrote unto Paul and asked him some questions, a whole bunch of questions. And one of them apparently was, is it good for a person to marry or not to marry? That's just my conjecture, that they were asking, is it good for a person to marry or not to marry? That was the question. Because, and then he goes on to address that very issue in this entire chapter. This entire chapter of 1 Corinthians chapter 7 is dealing with this issue of marriage and not to marry. You don't have to get married against popular belief. You don't have to get married. It's not a law. It's not a law of God that you have to get married. And a lot of people think it is, but they're mistaken. It's not. In fact, the Apostle Paul recommends that you don't get married here in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, and he explains why. He gives really great reasons why. So I think that's why the Corinthians were writing to the Apostle Paul, was to ask him whether it is good to marry or not. And now he starts in on his answer. It is good for a man not to touch a woman. That's what he says there in verse 1. It is good for a man not to touch a woman. He's just making a statement there. It's good for a man not to touch a woman. Now, this word good is the Greek word kalos, and it just means good or beautiful or venerable. So it's not a bad thing for a man not to touch a woman, but he's saying here it's a good thing, venerable, a beautiful thing even. And this word here, it's good for a man not to touch a woman. That word not in the Greek is the word may, M-A, may. And it means a qualified negation. It's not an absolute negation. That would be the Greek word ou. But it's a qualified negation, meaning it's a limited negation. That's how the Greek uses that word may. A limited negation. And so when he says for a man not to touch a woman, it's a limited negation. It's not a complete categorical absolute negation don't touch a woman. No, but it means don't touch a woman sexually. It's a qualified negation. It's a good thing for a man not to touch a woman sexually. Okay? That's what he's saying here. But then he goes on to verse 2. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication. But on account of fornication. See, on account of fornication, having sex outside of marriage, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Own as opposed to having sex with many different people. The husband has his own wife, his own woman to have sex with, and likewise the wife has her own man to have sex with. That's what the Apostle Paul is teaching us here. Let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Makes sense. I know from what I've read about communes, the early hippie communes in the 60s and 70s, where they practiced free sex, the people eventually, they didn't want to have sex with other people. They just wanted to have sex with one person, one partner. Isn't that interesting? It was a natural kind of impulse there to just want to have one partner in marriage. And I've also spoken to people who have fornicated with many women and said it was, after a while, it was just completely unsatisfying. It didn't satisfy them, you know. So let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. And stick together with just those two. Verse 3, let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. Okay, let the husband render. This word render in the Greek means to give away, deliver, to pay like a debt. So render to the wife, pay the debt that you owe to the wife. Let the husband pay to the wife what is due her, what is her right to have, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. I'm going to stop this teaching right here, and I'll do verses 4 and 5 later.